Maryland and try to build a $30 million cathedral, and now the banks won't lend the rest of the money to finish it. You read the article for yourself. It's in the newspaper this morning. And now churches are out there. Churches are out on the limb because they can only get interest-only loans because the banks say, no, we got to hold on this money to lend it to the corporations that are creating jobs. All you guys are having is sanctified pep rallies. And now the church has been living with this great, grand deception. And now what are the TV preachers going to tell the people? Dance around the church all you want, high five 5, 10, 15, or 20 people. You got bad credit, you're not going to get no mortgage loan. And probably can't get an auto loan as tight as money is in some parts of this country. It's a grand deception, a grand illusion. This individualism, materialism, selfishness, that greed that has infiltrated the church, and now churches have overbuilt these mega facilities that sit basically empty almost all week. Consuming up all of God's resources and God's money, paying huge mortgage payments and interest payments while poor people are suffering. This grand illusion, this grand deception. And you don't hear that crowd ever preach this text, or very little of the red stuff in the Bible. Because the red stuff that Jesus said, it always indicts, it always confronts, it always challenges the status quo and the prevailing philosophy of what it means to be a follower of God. A choice of the cross over comfort. The third thing I see in this text is a calculation of the cost. A calculation of the cost. And I've always read this passage, and I've always interpreted it one way. But I think that I may have been interpreting it wrong. In the text, watch what Jesus says. For which of you, now he illustrates the point he's trying to make. Now he's talking about who can be his disciples and who cannot be his disciples. You got to love me supremely above every other relationship. You got to be prepared to embrace the cross over comfort and convenience. And now he goes to the illustration. Now, I've always interpreted this passage to mean, as he was illustrating it, he was saying to the disciples, you got to first sit down and count the cost. But I don't think that's right. I don't think that's right at all. I think he's talking about himself. Look at the text closely. He says, for which of you intending to build a tower does not sit down first and count the cost? Now, that's what people would ordinarily do. So he's using the parable of the illustration to show them that what you do in terms of counting the cost is what I also do. So I'm not going to lower my standards for disciples. He's talking about himself. In the text, he is the one doing the building. He's the one that's getting ready to build the tower. And the tower is illustrative of the kingdom of God. Watch the text closely. He says, for which of you intending to build a tower does not sit down first and count the cost? He says, I'm intending to build something. I'm building and advancing the kingdom of God. I've already sat down and I've counted the cost. I know what it's going to take. I know what it's going to take for me personally. I got to walk this lonely road all by myself. I'm going to be crucified. My blood is going to be shed and spilled out on the mountain called Calvary so I can give birth to the church and expand God's kingdom. I've already counted the cost. So if you have not forsaken all to love me supremely, if you are not willing to bear your own cross on a daily basis, you can't be my disciple, because I can't build my kingdom, I can't build my tower with vacillating people. That's what he's talking about. I can't build this thing. And then he goes on to say, otherwise, you don't finish it. You only get the foundation laid, and that's the secret right there. The foundation is laid. The foundation, Paul writes in 1 Corinthians 3, is the foundation of Christ. His death, his burial, and his resurrection. He says, so if all of I get laid is the foundation, if all I do is lay a foundation, that people can be saved and have their sins forgiven, but I'm unable to build the structure on the foundation, then people are going to mock me and make fun of me, and the kingdom of God will become the laughing stock. That's why he said, you can't be my disciple. I'm not going to get out here and start building, and then the building stops, and people laugh at me, laugh at my Father, and laugh at my kingdom. He's not talking about us. He's talking about himself as to why people who don't make the commitment can't be attached to him in a discipleship relationship, because he said, I can't depend on you to do the work that I'm trying to get done. Now watch it, what else he says. Saying, this man began to build and was not able to finish. He'd already told them, upon this rock, I'll build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. Jesus wasn't just trying something to see if it was going to work. He was guaranteeing his plan would work. Now here's the last big point, and I think it illustrates that he's talking about himself. Or what king? Now none of those people he was talking to were kings. Or what king going to make war against another king does not sit down first and consider whether he is able with 10,000 to meet him who comes against him with 20,000? He's talking about himself. None of the people he was talking to were kings. But he says, look, if a king only got 10,000 men and the opposition got 20,000, he better have some lean, mean fighting machine. He has a 2-to-1 odds against him. I'm a king, Jesus says. In comparison, my army is going to be small, appear to be insignificant, but we are waging war to win because I'm enlisting the right type of soldiers to be a part of my kingdom. Would y'all listen to me? See, y'all don't love history. You can't understand the world if you don't love history. The history of the world is told in conflict. It's told in wars. You can't understand history apart from studying war, because every nation, almost every nation basically is formed, it develops, it evolves out of war. Either internal conflict, external conflict, or conquest. Are you following me? Watch the wars and you understand the kingdom of God. Watch the wars and you understand the kingdom of God. He saw a king, 2-to-1 odds. But he can win if he has the right soldiers with the right commitment, if he has the right strategy. Otherwise, he ought to sue for peace and compromise and not go to war. And Jesus said, all-out war has been declared by the devil himself against the throne of heaven. When Satan rose up in insurrection to the divine providence, authority of God, and dared to say, I will exalt myself above the Most High. I will be like God. And when 1/3 of all the holy angels followed Satan in his diabolical insurrection, war was declared. All-out war was declared, and the prize, the crowning jewel in this conflict and in this conquest is the souls of men. Because of everything that God created under the angels, men and women, boys and girls are his prized possession. That's why Satan went right after Eve in the Garden of Eden. So Jesus said, this is about war. This is about spiritual conflict. We're not wrestling with flesh and blood, but principalities and powers, spiritual darkness in high places, the rulers of the darkness of this world. So Jesus says, I just can't take anybody in. I just can't take anybody in if I'm going to win, not to be a disciple. The United States military has raised its standards. When I was a boy growing up in Mount Hope, West Virginia, if a boy dropped out of school, if he got in trouble, they would take him to the magistrate, the justice of the peace, or the judge, and the judge would say, boy, you got 2 choices. You can go into my house, the county jail, or you can go in Uncle Sam's house. And Uncle Sam would take just about any young boy, my mama would say, if he's not blind, crippled, or crazy, he would take you. He would take you in as a GI. He would put you through boot